we're going to try to draw the ceilings for the ground floor. As you may already know, you also get a plan for the ceilings, or more specifically the false ceilings, according to which first you're going to have to type the ceilings and create all the different types that you need, and then place them also based on the elevation that is required by the plan. So if you take a look here, we've got a table for the finishing items, which also gives us the information about the false ceilings that need to be drawn. Some of the project spaces, as you can see, don't even have a false ceiling. For example, that goes for the service room, which we have on the ground floor, which is the one where we drew the partitions. Also, the ground floor's lobby uses sheet plaster for ceilings. So basically, in this table, you can see the materials that you need to use for each different part, and you should also adapt it with the requirements of the plan that you are given. So basically, in the finished schedules, you have information about the false ceilings of each space and the materials that you need to use. And we've also got a plan for the false ceilings. So I'm going to go to this AutoCAD plan. And in the plan we have for the architecturals, we also have the false ceilings. We also have them in a separate file, but they're all the same thing and it's not that complicated. Now, for example, this ground floor on which we're working, its ceiling plan is above it. Also, this area which doesn't have a pattern indicates that it doesn't need a ceiling. And just like we also checked in the finish table, we said we didn't need a ceiling for the service rooms. Now, this part over here has a ceiling, the tag of which says that this is a Grillium false ceiling. And as for these white lines you can see over here, these are actually the linear lightings. Now, the height of this ceiling from the finished floor level is also given to us over here. So we understand that the ceiling that we need to draw is going to be 5 meters from the FFL. We have another type of ceiling over here, judging by how it has a different pattern from the previous part. So if we take a look at its tag, we understand that the material of the ceiling is plaster. Once again, we've got some lightings around here, which are not only linear, but there are also spotlights. Also, the height of both of these ceilings are different, and once again, we've got another plaster ceiling here, and so on. So we don't need to do anything too big. First, we're going to have to create the different types that we need for drawing the ceilings, and then we're going to get to actually drawing them. So first, in this ground floor, we have a Grillium ceiling, as well as a plaster one. So we have two ceiling types that we're going to need to define first, and then draw. But there is also another point here, which is the thickness of these ceilings. You might also be given the value for that parameter, either in this finished table, or you could just figure that out by checking the plans that you were given. You could just take a look around at the details and the plans and figure out what you need. For example, if I take a look in this section, then I can see the ceiling of this part has been drawn. Now, if I measure a distance over here, for example, from here to here, then I would get 5 centimeters. I'm going to also double check with the client, and then if there are certain details that I need to follow, I'm going to draw according to those, and check some more distances to be sure. If I get 5 centimeters for all thicknesses, once again I'm going to have to double check with the client, and then create the different types that I need with thickness of 5 centimeters. So now let's jump to Revit and create the types that we need for our ceilings. I'm going to go over here, and in the first step I'm going to have to go into one of these ceiling plans. So I'm going to go over here and expand ceiling plans. Now here you might notice that we have not yet assigned different ceiling plans for each floor plan. So I'm going to go over to the View tab, drop down Plan Views, and then select Ceiling Plan. And then in this window I'm going to add the levels. I'm just going to be adding the FFLs, since the TOS levels aren't what we need. So I'll just add the FFLs, and then go into the ground floor. Only remember that the ground floor is actually this L1 level which we had in the template. So I'm just going to rename it here. I'm going to make it Ceiling Plan / Ground Level. Also, you need to make sure that you name the rest of your levels accurately, since these aren't FFLs anymore. Also, on a more general note, you should always have the correct names for your plans, because you see these FFLs that we have over here are only used while we are working on the project, and then we want to make the finishing touches by creating sheets and organizing the levels. Then we would need to duplicate these and then organize them into the sheets. For example, we're going to have to duplicate this for the furniture plan. Then we duplicate it again for the flooring, and then another time for measuring. Also, we make sure that we name all of those duplicated plans accurately, and we won't be just inserting these plans into the sheets. That's because our plans will be divided into different categories. We're going to talk all about that in the sheet making chapter, where we will learn how that is done. But for now, I have only renamed the ceiling plan. So remember that you're going to need to rename all the rest of your ceiling plans accurately as well. Now I'm going to open the ground level, and first I'm going to remove the scope box, as well as the crop and crop region. So now I'm going to have to draw the false ceiling in this plan. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and open the CAD plan for these ceilings. Okay, so over here we have a ceiling CAD plan, which we're going to copy and bring it into a new file. We're going to paste it and also adjust it 0 point. If you recall, we said that that was going to be the intersection of these two grids. So 0, 0, and then confirm. I'm going to also explode it multiple times to make sure nothing remains as a block, and then I'm going to save it into this folder over here, and then DWG to Revit. Now I'm going to name it Ceiling Ground. Then I'm going to go over here and import the CAD file and use it to draw our items more precisely. So let's go find it in DWG to Revit. Here it is, Ceiling Ground. For the unit, we're going to put meter, current view only, and then open. So here it is. Now I'm going to go over here, select ceiling, and then I'm going to select one of these compound ceiling types, and then I'm going to duplicate it. For example, I'm going to name it Chemia, Grillium, Ceiling. We also set the thickness to be 5 centimeters. So first I'm going to delete this one, and then for the structure I'm going to put 5 centimeters. Now I'm going to also need to assign the correct material to the ceiling. So I'm just going to go over here and duplicate one of the materials. And then I'm going to name the duplicated one Chemia / Grillium. Okay, so its color seems to be fine. And what matters more to us is the fill or surface pattern, because you remember it had a pattern in the plan. So I'm going to assign a surface pattern here as well. For example, I'm going to select this one. Then I'm going to click OK, and OK. Then I'm going to go over here and select Sketch Ceiling, and then I'm going to start drawing a ceiling from, you see the ceiling that we need to draw begins from here, and then goes all the way down to this corner. For its elevation or height, we said that it was going to be 5 meters from the FFL. So we're going to confirm that value. And so we have drawn the ceiling for this part over here. Now I'm going to have to also check this out in the 3D view. So I'm going to go over here and uncheck the section box and then turn it back on. And I'm going to bring the top down a little bit and also make it tighter from the side so that we could see the false ceiling that we have drawn. I'm going to also rotate this a little bit, and here it is. So this is the false ceiling that we just drew for that one area in the ground floor. Now, in order to go over here and also take a look at it in the plan, in the first step I'm going to set the top to level above so that we could see up to above the ceiling. So for the top, we're going to select level above, and therefore we're going to have to also set the depth level to level above again with offset 0, and for the cut plane maybe 2.2 is fine. So now if I click OK, this is what our plan will look like. This area with this pattern is actually the ceiling that we have drawn. Also, if you feel like the pattern is too tiny for you, you can just go right ahead and change the pattern to whatever else that you think fits better. For example, I'm going to go over here and choose a thicker pattern. So basically, I just want the distance between the lines to be a little bigger, or maybe I just want them to be vertical instead of horizontal. All of that just depends on you and what you need. And for example, you could even duplicate one of the patterns. And then, for example, you could just change this to 200. Then change the line spacing to 0.2. And then you will have this, for example. Something like this. It's just all up to you. So now we've got one of our ceilings. And now I'm going to change the draw layer of this CAD plan to foreground so we could see better. Now there's also another ceiling over here, which we said was plaster. And in fact, we've got two ceilings in two different heights. This one's 5.30 and this one is 5. So we're going to have to draw those again. I'm going to duplicate this type. And I'm going to name the duplicated one to plaster. And the thickness is correct. Only we're going to have to also duplicate its material. So that we could also assign a different pattern from the previous one. Just choose any pattern other than what you've selected before. And for example, I'm going to select this one right here. Remember that all of this just depends on your own taste, as well as also on your project. For example, the pattern here is diagonal, to which I'm going to have to change the pattern later. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here and draw the ceiling. First, I'm going to select the one inside and see if I can do it by using the tab key. Then I'm going to draw this one ceiling. And afterwards, I'm going to select it. And for its height, I'm going to put 5.30. And then I'm going to draw another one of this ceiling right outside. Meaning that I'm going to take this ceiling. And we also have another one of that around here. We're going to have to cover those as well. So that makes it up to around here. This part also needs a ceiling. And also here. And this side as well. And just continue covering the rest of the parts. Then I'm going to also trim these two together. Then trim this one with this one. And as for this area, it seems to be fine. So let's click Finish. And here is our ceiling. It is also on the right height, which is 5 meters from the FFL. So now we have finished drawing these ceilings. And now I can finally go over here to change the fill pattern. So first I'm going to duplicate this one. And then for the line angle, I'm going to make it 45. So we just change the line angle to 45 degrees. So they become diagonal, like this. But it seems to be on the other side, so we're just going to go back and flip the diagonals to the other side. And then make the angles look exactly like what we had in the CAD plan. Okay, so now we are done with those two areas. And there's also another area over here. This one also needs a ceiling. We don't have the height for it, but it's going to be 5 meters again. Also remember that you could use the finish table as the guide for the heights that you need to have for your ceilings. So I'm going to go over here and draw this last one as well. Its material is also that plaster sheet that I told you earlier. So now I'm going to duplicate the ceiling. And then I'm going to start from this corner all the way down to this corner. Now I'm going to take a look around to make sure that it all looks fine. And so we will have these ceilings. Also, if I click Finish, Then we will confirm the ceiling that we've just added. There is also another 5-meter high plaster ceiling in this part, and another one over here, which is 5.30 meters high. So we're gonna have to draw those two as well. And as for these parts where you can see some lights, we do need more ceiling, but the ceiling was not included in the CAD plan. However, there is still some plaster ceiling needed, which will go around in this area. So this way we could also draw the ceilings or the false ceilings that we need in the plan, and also adjust their heights based on the required types.